About a week ago, I made a video reviewing Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and I really liked the show. And a lot of my comments, and when I say a lot, I mean like the vast majority, were focusing on race swapping, and people were just straight up rejecting the show due to the fact that a couple of the characters have gone for a race swap. And that sort of inspired me to make this video, just so I can make my opinion on race swapping clear, because I don't think it's as simple as people make it out to be on either sides of the argument. I think there's a lot of hypocrisy, and I think people need to chill the fuck out a little bit. The way I'm going to structure this is I'm going to firstly just set out my general opinion on race swapping, and then in particular I will defend the race swapping on Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Now, I know this is a subject that gets a lot of people angry, but I ask that you just hear me out and have an open mind. I want to begin by saying I don't think people who dislike race swapping are inherently racist. A lot of people jump to that conclusion, and I think that's quite ignorant. I think people just like to preserve the tradition and the accuracy of the comics. For example, let's say they made a Sonic film where Sonic was red. People would complain just as much. Now, having said that, there are still a lot of people who just genuinely are racist, and they're just using it as an excuse to be racist. But it's important not to label everyone against race swapping as racist. I just don't think that's accurate. So enough blabbering, I'll get to my opinion. Is race swapping good or bad? Well, the answer is, it genuinely depends. It depends on the intention. It's clear to me that people who are against race swapping aren't always against it, because I've never heard anyone complain about Nick Fury being black. I've never heard anyone complain about Namor's race swap in Black Panther. Not all race swapping is the same. Sometimes race swapping is completely performative and has no real reason to exist. But in other times, it can serve the story and genuinely have a substantive reasoning for existing. And I think the latter half of this is completely acceptable. And a perfect example for when I think is acceptable is, say you're a director and you want to find an actor to play a character, and you find an actor who you think is perfect for the role simply based on their acting merit, yet they don't happen to be the same race as the character from the comics. However, the race isn't an integral aspect of that character. That's completely fine. And most of you will accept this when it comes to other traits like height, eye colour, hair colour. Look at Punisher. Jon Bernthald's 5'11", Punisher's 6'3", but they do the best they can. Charlie Cox isn't redhead. Daredevil's a redhead, but they do the best that they can. And the first thing that comes to mind for me is Ben Urich in Daredevil. Ben Urich has always been white in the comics, but his race has never been an important part of his character. And the actor who plays Ben Urich in the show does an amazing job. And you just know when they're being genuine about it or when they're just doing it for the sake of doing it. However, I do think there are certain circumstances where race swapping isn't a good idea, even when the race isn't important to the character. For example, take someone like Spider-Man, Peter Parker Spider-Man. It wouldn't make any sense to make him black, as people already associate that with Miles Morales. Furthermore, take a character like Superman or Batman. These characters are so fundamentally popular, everyone has the association of when they imagine them with that certain race because of how popular they are. Now take a character like Ben Urich, where no one really knows about him, he's not very iconic, and it doesn't really have an effect on the character by just changing the race. I hope that makes sense. The general point I'm just trying to make is, you can tell when it's genuine, and the intention behind it really does matter. If the intention is just a pander, just to do it for the sake of it, I can understand the frustration, but if it's a genuinely good creative decision, I don't see why people complain. So now moving on to defending Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, I would firstly like to point out a lot of hypocrisy with these people who always complain about race swapping. Firstly, let's look at the Dark Knight trilogy. No one, and I mean no one, and I've never heard anyone complain about the fact that they turned Ra's al Ghul from an Arabic man to a white man. Furthermore, where were all of you when they turned Bane from a Latina into a white guy? No one fucking complained, not one single person. And that just really highlights the fact that people are being inconsistent with their outrage. And the reason they've accepted it is because it wasn't done due to performative reasons. It was done due to creative decisions, where Christopher Nolan just thought Liam Neeson and Tom Hardy would be good actors for these roles. But now it seems like every single race swap people just think is performative, or there's no genuine creative reason behind it. And to highlight even further hypocrisy, in Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, there are three characters who are race swapped, at least I think. You've got Dr. Connors, and you've got Norman Osborn, and by extension of Norman Osborn, you've got Harry Osborn. So the people saying, oh, this is a woke show and I'm not gonna watch it, are the same people who fucking love Spectacular Spider-Man, where news fucking flash, Liz Allen was made Hispanic, Ned Leeds was made Asian. Where the fuck were you complaining then? Furthermore, I bet all of you fuckers still went to the cinema and watched Spider-Man No Way Home when Ned Leeds again was made Asian, when Mary Jane was made black, and where Flash Thompson was made Latino. And I bet none of you left thinking that was a terrible film because there were three characters who used to be white and now they're not. No, you all left thinking that was great. So why can't you give this show a chance just because of the similar race swaps? Now further fucking more, no one complained when Doc Ock was a woman in Spider-Verse because people understood that that it's an alternate universe. That's the whole point of the film. Well, guess what? So is this show. It's an alternate universe. So there are all these other different circumstances where people will accept race swapping. However, for this show, nah, this show's just woke. Like what? Just be a little bit consistent. Come on now. Now, if you're not annoyed at me already, you're gonna fucking kill me for this. I'm about to argue that Norman Osborn being black is just as good of a race swap as Nick Fury being black. Norman Osborn has been rocking waves in the comic books as a white guy since the 60s. And when I think of Norman Osborn, I think of his fucking trim. It's such a classic part of his character. I think it's more integral than his race. And when it comes to adapting him to live action, what's easier? Getting a black actor who can just rock waves, or getting a white actor who looks completely out of place with waves? And I'm not trying to say white people can't have waves. I think as long as they're confident with it, they can look good. But let's be honest, most general audiences don't. Most people laugh at the prospects of that. And when watching this show, you really don't get the vibes that they made him black just to make him black. They've hired such a good actor, Coleman Domingo, to play this character. And obviously, since this show is MCU adjacent, one day they might want to have him play Norman Osborn in live action. So it makes complete sense to have him be black in this show, because if Coleman ever played it in live action, obviously he would be black. And they want this world to be consistent with the MCU. And then obviously, by extension, they can't have Norman be black and Harry be white. So it makes sense that Harry's black too. So I think both of these race swaps make actual sense, and they make more sense than they did in Spectacular Spider-Man. So yeah, that's just my defense as to why they made him black. You can disagree with me if you want, that's fair enough, but I think just instantly assuming it's woke and neglecting any sort of creative reasoning as to why they've done this is just ignorant. Now, the next character is Dr. Connors, and yes, there's probably less reasoning for her to be a black woman than there is for Norman to be a black man, but one of my favorite things about this show is how different it is to the comics while maintaining the core essence of Spider-Man. And I think Dr. Connors being a woman is just as interesting as Dr. Octopus being a woman in the Spider-Verse, and it doesn't at all neglect from the film, because we can all accept that this is an alternate reality depiction. So yes, race swapping in a lot of media can be completely performative, can be annoying. I understand that. But we have to acknowledge that sometimes it can also have genuine creative reasons behind it. This show has so much love and care put into it, and so much appreciation for the source material and what Spider-Man means, that it bothers me to just see people completely neglect it just because it has race-swapped characters when they have accepted the Dark Knight trilogy, Spectacular Spider-Man, the Homecoming trilogy. But for some reason, this show is the only one that's not allowed to do it. I'd like to finish by saying this video is in no way an attack to any particular person. I genuinely do completely understand your positioning. I understand why a lot of people take issue with it, and I don't think it should be something that happens for every character ever. I think it should be limited for where it makes sense. I think it shouldn't apply to characters who are already so popular that everybody has a preconceived notion of how they should look. But I do think instantly jumping to a conclusion that something is rubbish just because of a couple of race swaps, don't think that's fair on the people who work so hard to create such a good show. At the end of the day, who cares that they made a white character black? It doesn't detract from the show. You can still enjoy the show, even if there's no story reason, even if there's no plot reason to change the race of a character. If all of your characters are white, it's such a small change to make just to allow for more inclusivity and representation. Like, it's just such a small payoff just to allow for that. Please don't bully me in the comments, please.